In what ways can capitalizing an asset like harm it as a property investment?
Well, number one, if you overbuild it and you have excess space that you can't lease, which is the case in a number of centres around the greater Johannesburg area at the moment, you're building something which is never ever going to be leased. It's a bit of empty space. I've always said, if you can lease a property, you can hold it because you can finance it with the bank, or you can sell it. But if you don't lease it, it's just a pile of bricks and empty space. It's not worth anything.
And maybe the cost of the debt on top of it.
Plus the cost of the debt of building that, yeah. So you just got to be sensible. It's always better to extend a centre at a later stage than overbuild it up front. That's what I believe. There are people who believe the opposite. They say, we'll build it now because it's cheaper now. But, you build it now, you've got to lease it now. If you don't lease it now, it's
no value,
worthless.
Yeah. I'd just add one other thing there. I think, if you look at the aspect, and we started by talking about investment, which is really what we're investing in these things. How do you generate the wealth margin? You do it by developing at a cost which is sensible, market related, and not overcapitalized. So when we talk overcapitalized, I'm talking about the actual rands you spent. So if you take, say, building costs, let's say it's 20,000 rand a square meter to build a mall, then if you're finding it's costing you 25 or 26 now, your upfront cost is a certain level. Your rent could have to be pushed to give you the return, but even if you don't push the rents, when you start looking at your value and your added value, you're creating less value. So there's a relationship between income and capital cost in terms of the value creation. And a lot of the centres are overcapitalized by being too big, which means money has been spent on space that Pete says you can't let. And therefore, when you look at valuing it, there's no margin. And therefore, they don't operate or they're not efficient from an investment perspective.
Could there also be a case where too much building has been built to actually make it inconvenient to the customer, which then reduces turnovers of retailers within the particular centre? Have you seen any instances?
It could be. There are certain malls where it's just the mall itself is just too long and so forth, and shoppers find it tiring and inconvenient to walk that length of the mall. I know we have one mall at the moment which was built over 3 phases, and to walk from one side to the other, you probably do 1 kilometre
at least.
And it's not ideal.
I think absolutely.
But sometimes these things happen. That was a centre that was developed over 3 different phases, and people shop one side of the centre or the other. They don't really shop the whole thing at the same time.
Understood.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a vital aspect, and you've got to realize at the end of the day, if the customer doesn't frequent your centre, you're not going to do the turnover, so you don't achieve your goal.
Absolutely. So what role does preventative maintenance play in preserving the value of a retail property asset?
Well, I think it's just, common sense. You don't want to leave any maintenance to the last minute and something starts falling down and whatever, then you've got to fix it. Rather get in early, you identify problems, carry out the maintenance, get it done so that you don't inconvenience tenants, and because tenants is your lifeblood. Without tenants trading and paying rent, your centre's worth nothing. So get in there and do it before it becomes a major problem. And you normally find if you do things reasonably early, they normally cost a little bit less than when you have to do things in a crisis.
I think there's a good analogy with government property. We find ourselves going into local authority offices and other public sector offices, and really it's atrocious, the lack of maintenance. And what's not realized is that by doing that you're destroying value. And one thing we can't afford as a country is to see the destruction of value. And to achieve that sort of or maintain the value, there's got to be an understanding. I don't think people understand. People develop something and they don't understand that it costs to maintain. Even your own home, we all know it costs money to maintain a home. If you don't maintain, you are destroying value. And it's very difficult to get that back. You can't reclaim that value. So there's got to be a mindset which says we need a preventative maintenance program and not, in other words, a proactive as opposed to a reactive or reactionary.
I mean, we have the classic example at the moment in South Africa in terms of Eskom, water, roads. They haven't been maintained, all of these things. Why? Because I suspect that the people appointed to look after those aspects of the economy don't have the qualifications to carry out what needs to be done. And therefore, you have the crumbling infrastructure in the whole state operation in South Africa. And gradually, it's going to have to be repaired and fixed, but it's going to cost a lot more to fix now that it's been allowed to get into the state that it is at the moment.
Absolutely.